Okay, good morning. For those who are here in Canada, perhaps, or North America, good afternoon and good evening. I realize many of you are tuning in from different time zones, so I'd like to welcome you all. I'm really pleased to be invited here to the FIA's Welcome Day, representing International Student Support, or ISS for short, as we call it. So what we do at our office is we work to foster a sense of belonging and community for all students who are new to Canada, and as well as students who are seeking a global experience on campus. We welcome and support newcomers as they adjust to the new Canadian environment and culture, and we look to connect you to the vibrant campus community and support you in reaching your academic, personal, and professional goals. So I wanted to include a photo of each of my colleagues. We are a team of 7 at International Student Support. 5 of us are ISAs, or International Student Advisors. So that's that acronym you see on the screen. An International Student Advisor at Ryerson is someone who supports international students in all levels of study, whether that's undergraduate or graduate like yourselves. And all of us are either regulated international student immigration advisors or regulated Canadian immigration consultants, which are 2 very long titles, but basically what that means is that we are licensed immigration professionals who can provide guidance on matters related to immigration and how it applies to you as an international student. For a bit of background, at Ryerson this year, there's about 4,000 international students from over 120 countries across the undergraduate and graduate levels of study. This year, we were pleased to support 450 international students in master's and PhD level. So our office is currently operating online with all of our staff working remotely, and we are available Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I know there's been some concerns with applying for your study permit due to lockdowns, internal travel restrictions, and visa office closures. So at this time, what I would strongly recommend is that you apply for your study permit online as soon as possible. So as long as you have internet access, the ability to download Adobe Reader for the application forms, and you can take a clear photo of any documents you need, you can proceed with fully completing your study permit application online. So I'm going to provide some links at the end of this presentation, as well as our contact information for students who have questions about how to do that. But I understand most visa offices are closed right now, so please do proceed with applying online. Another concern that we've been hearing a lot is that there are some documents that students just aren't able to obtain right now due to COVID-19 or other circumstances. So the government has been quite lenient, and right now, if you are not able to provide a document that is requested for your study permit application, we would ask that you upload a letter of explanation in its spot. So when you are applying online, there is an upload box for each requested document. For any document that you're not able to provide, you can write a very brief explanation and upload it, and your application will not be refused on the basis of incomplete documentation. As some of you may know, biometrics is one of the required parts of a study permit application or other immigration-related applications to Canada. So biometrics, which means providing your fingerprints and photograph at a specific center, currently is not available. So at most places around the world, including Canada, biometrics collection centers are closed. The government has also provided an update that you will not be required to give your biometrics until the site closest to you reopens. So I know this has been a big concern. Once you submit your study permit application online, you will receive an automatic request for biometrics. Please know that until the site closest to you reopens, you do not need to give your biometrics. Okay, one of the other big questions we have received from you is what to do in the event that your study permit is not issued before you want to begin your classes. So for example, in the fall 2020 semester. Right now, many Canadian visa offices are working at a reduced capacity, meaning that application processing times will likely increase. At this time, if you do wish to begin your program of study and your study permit application has not yet been approved, you can proceed to do so. So you can choose to begin your studies prior to the approval of your study permit application. What we do want to highlight here is there are a few things that you need to take into consideration. So again, yes, you can start your program of study before your study permit has been approved. We will not be asking for a copy of your study permit approval letter in order to be enrolled or anything like that. So again, if you do choose to begin your studies online from outside of Canada before your study permit is approved, there's some considerations to take into account. The first one is that in the situation where your study permit application is refused or denied, you may not be able to proceed with your academic program once in-person classes resumes. And that would be because you would not be authorized to enter Canada with the purpose of pursuing post-secondary studies without an approved study permit. So in the event that your study permit application is refused, which I hope is not the case, if it is refused, you will be issued a letter outlining the reason or the reasons why it has been denied. If the reasons given are things that you can refute, or if you have any new information or additional document that can go against those reasons, I would strongly encourage that you submit a new application. So when a study permit application is refused, there is no way to repeal it, but what you can do is submit a new application and clearly outline the reasons for denial and refute them with information and documentation. If in the chance that you reapply and are rejected again, the decision would be up to you whether you decide to continue with your program of study. Please do remember that you would not be authorized to enter Canada to study once in-person classes resumes unless you have an approved study permit. So if this is the situation where your study permit has been refused and you have reapplied and it has not been approved, I would really recommend discussing with your graduate program administrator about the feasibility of either continuing to pursue your full program online or what the best options for you would be. So there's also some considerations for the post-graduation work permit. Okay, so there's also some points I wanted to mention about distance learning or online learning and the post-graduation work permit. I know that the post-graduation work permit, or the PGWP for short, is an important consideration when students are coming to study in Canada because it does provide the opportunity to gain valuable Canadian work experience and potentially use that work experience to apply for permanent residence and citizenship later down the road. So if you do decide to begin your academic program prior to receiving your study permit approval, if you intend on remaining in Canada via the PGWP after completing your studies, you must have received the study permit approval before you start the online studies if you want the time to count towards the length of your work permit. So what that means is that the post-graduation work permit length directly correlates with the official length of your program of studies. In a lot of cases, the length of your program is the length of the work permit issued. However, at the graduate level, for students studying programs that are 16 to 23 months or more, those students may be issued work permits that are 3 years in length, which is the maximum length of the work permit. So if you are in a one-year program, for example, like the MEng Computer Networks, and you begin studying and your study permit has not yet been approved, the time you're studying won't count towards the length of your work permit. So what that means is that your work permit would be shorter. If you are beginning your program in fall 2020, so in September, and your courses have been moved online due to COVID-19, which Miliana did confirm that they have been, if you're studying outside of Canada, the time between the beginning of the semester, so the start date in early September, and December 31st, 2020, will not be deducted from the length of your post-graduation work permit as long as you have a valid study permit or have received a study permit approval letter prior to beginning your studies. So if you've already applied for your study permit, that's great. Right now, that is the only thing that is within your control. As has been mentioned a few times already, there are a lot of things that Ryerson and ourselves as individuals are not able to control, such as Canadian laws, policies, procedures, and when those things are changing. So you as international students, the only thing within your control is applying for that study permit. When it gets processed, if it's delayed, those are all things that are out of your control. So please do proceed to apply for your study permit if you intend on starting your studies in the fall as soon as possible. Normally, for the post-graduation work permit eligibility, any time that is spent studying online is deducted from your work permit length. However, the first bullet point on the slide that I mentioned is an update that the government has made to be more flexible. So again, what that means is that if your study permit has been approved or you hold a valid study permit, your online studies in the fall 2020 semester will not be deducted from the length of your work permit. I also wanted to address some travel restrictions as they stand currently, because we've received questions and inquiries about physically traveling to Canada, even if classes are online. So right now, Canada has implemented some fairly strict travel restrictions. There are exemptions for certain individuals based on their purpose of travel. So for example, if it is urgent and essential, based on their relation to Canadian citizens or permanent residents, or the status they hold in Canada. So at this time, the government has indicated that only international students who have been approved for a study permit on or before March 18th, 2020, which was the date when these travel restrictions took effect, would be able to come to Canada. So what that means for you as incoming international graduate students is that unless you have an approved study permit from March 18th, 2020 or before, at this time, you are not included in a travel exemption, meaning that based on the current policy, you would not be able to travel to Canada. So as Miliana mentioned, these are the travel restrictions in place right now. We do not know if or when they will change. So what I would recommend that you do is to be frequently referring to the Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada, the IRCC website, which I'll provide a link to at the end of the presentation. So if for any reason you are exempt from the travel restrictions, perhaps you've already been studying here in Canada, your undergraduate program or a master's program, or you have a study permit approval letter or a valid study permit that was issued on or before March 18th. If that does apply to you, you may be able to travel to Canada. However, if you do intend on physically coming to Canada because you are exempt from the travel restrictions, please know that anyone who is entering Canada by air will be required to present a health screening prior to boarding their flight, as well as upon arrival in Canada. So you will undergo 2 screenings. One would be when you arrive at the airport in your home country and check into your flight, and the other one would be once you are disembarking upon arrival in Canada. If you are showing any symptoms at either time of those health screenings, you will not be permitted to enter the country. If you are physically traveling to Canada, you do have to have a plan to quarantine for 14 days upon arrival, even if you have no symptoms. The immigration officials and border officers are asking quite a few questions from my understanding about what your quarantine plan is. So if it is the case that you are coming to Canada, please have information and documentation readily available to you in the event that there are questions about where specifically you are going, who you are staying with, and how you will be able to provide for yourself in those 14 days where you're not able to leave your house, so how you'll be able to get your food and other necessities. I've listed these resources on the screen. I would say that these are very useful resources for international students from an immigration perspective. The first is the International Student Support website. So that is our official website. There's information on there about immigration as well as our programming and other offerings. The second bullet point is the Student Affairs COVID-19 updates and information page. So this is where our office is updating important, crucial, and time-sensitive information, So things related to immigration, policies that are changing is on the second website, the Student Affairs website, under the International Student Support tab that you can refer to. We have an FAQ section that addresses most of the questions we are receiving from students. On that FAQ section, there are additional links, so links to immigration policies that are pertinent to international students right now. The final website I've included as a resource is the IRCC, so that stands for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. That's the body of the government that handles immigration applications, would be the travel restrictions measured. So there are more exemptions to the travel restrictions that I didn't mention because I've just mentioned the ones that are most pertinent to international students. However, you can check that page out. It is updated frequently. So please do keep checking that page if you are intending on coming to Canada to see if those travel restrictions are lifted or if they are loosened and what would be the procedure to enter Canada. That is it for me. I've left our contact information on the slide, so any additional questions relating to immigration or your study permit application, please contact us at ISSASK, so that's issask@ryerson.ca. You can also follow us on social media, on our Instagram and Twitter, as well as Facebook at Ryerson ISS. We have been meeting with current and incoming students over Google Meet or Zoom. So as I mentioned, there are 5 international student advisors who are ready and able to support you and help answer your questions related to immigration. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to correspond with you over email or by setting up a virtual meeting. I wish all of you luck in making your decisions. And as Miliana mentioned, I do hope to see you all in person